Hey everybody, Dan here from Keystone Wood Specialties, here to talk to you about a tool we developed to help you better plan for and install rollout shelves using our X series bracket system. The tool itself, I'll explain here briefly. There's a couple elements to it. On the planning side of it, the tool has a series of measurements on the one end, and the measurements represent, on the outside, at the top and the bottom, they represent the edge of the drawer box, where it needs to be from the inside end of the cabinet when you're planning for that. The other center measurements represent the pilasters, and it shows three different pilaster dimensions. The two standard dimensions that we offer are 2.5 inch pilaster, and then we also have an 1.25 inch wide pilaster. And then also it shows the 7/8 inch wide minimum cut dimension that you could cut either of those down to, but once you go past that, the X series bracket doesn't work anymore. So that's like your minimum line there. But then we also, for each of those pilaster sizes, we have lines that extend out to where the edge of your drawer box will be. And that's to help you really quickly and visually see, when you hold this inside the edge of the cabinet, where your drawer box will fall using either of those pilasters. And then you can decide which pilaster you need to use based on the clearance needed, or is it going to clear any hinges that might be on the cabinet. And the two dimensions, the two sets of dimension lines are different. You can see the lines extend differently on the one side versus the other, and that's because the bottom one is designed for 5/8 inch thick drawer sides, and the top one is for 1/2 inch thick drawer sides. So depending on what your preference is, you want to make sure you're using the right side of it. So for me, I always use 5/8 inch thick drawer sides, and the best thing to do right when you start, if you're always using one dimension, I would recommend just taking a piece of tape and tape over the other one so that you don't accidentally use that one. So in this demonstration, we're going to use the 5/8 inch thick drawer sides, and you can see I've covered up the ones that don't apply to this situation. So we're going to use this set, and those are our pilaster widths. And we also have included a QR code so that you can, if you've got a smartphone, you can quickly scan that and go to a landing page from our website that has videos, this video in particular, and then it also has helpful documents that you can use to help write out your dimensions and help you through the math. So without further ado, I'm going to show you how I'm going to use that to plan for a rollout shelf in this cabinet. So here's how the tool works. You want to put this end against the inside of the cabinet end, not the opening, but the inside end of the cabinet. And what it's going to do is it's going to show you visual representations of where the pilaster would be, and it's also going to show you visual representations of where the edge of the drawer box will be. So for example, if we would use the 2.5 inch pilaster, you can see that the 2.5 inch pilaster goes exactly where that line is for the 2.5 inch pilaster. So that would go inside the cabinet like this, and then that line that extends shows you where the edge of the drawer box would be. So right there, the pilaster would be set back, but that is how the arrangement would be. You're typically not going to have a whole bunch of pilasters along with you when you're planning for your installation, or a drawer box that you can set in there to see if it would clear the opening. In this case, we can see that there's plenty of space there, and that would not be the most efficient use of the cabinet space. So let's look at another example. If we chose instead to use the smaller pilaster that's standard that we offer, which is the 1.25 inch pilaster, if we put that in, you can see that that line aligns with where the pilaster is, and then it extends down to show you where the edge of your drawer box is. So in this case, we're just going to give you a visual representation here of where the edge of that drawer box will be based on using that standard pilaster. That's what it's showing you. And then you can also tell whether or not that'll clear any kind of hinge or obstruction that you might have in the cabinet opening. And here even we have plenty of space as well. If we wanted to maximize, we can actually get away with cutting that down to the minimum. And that means we would take the 1¼ pilaster and cut it down to 7/8. And that would put the edge of our drawer here. And we can see just visually from that line that even using this hinge, that's going to clear that opening. So we can maximize the space of the cabinet by using the smallest possible pilaster.
Okay.
So using this tool and taking the measurements of the cabinet are going to give us our actual drawer box size and what size pilasters we need to order. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to write down what cabinet number this is in the floor plan. Since this is the only cabinet we have, this is cabinet number 1, and I'm going to measure the interior width of the cabinet from inside end to inside end. And this cabinet is 34 1/16 of an inch wide on the inside. I'm going to write that down. And then as we did before, we noticed that we can use the smallest pilaster to maximize space in this cabinet on this side. And using this jig, it's going to show you if you use the minimum pilaster that extends over, and we know that if we use the minimum pilaster, which is 7/8, the distance from the end of the cabinet to the drawer represented on that line is 1 3/16. So on my form here I have a box that says clearance from the left side of the cabinet to the drawer, and in there I'm going to put 1 3/16. That's the distance from the end of the cabinet to the edge of the drawer box. And then on the other side, it's the same thing. We can get away with using the minimum pilaster width to maximize space. So the clearance on the right side from the inside end to the edge of the drawer box is also going to be 1 3/16. So I'm writing that in. And then there's a place to indicate what size pilaster you want. So I'm going to put 7/8 both for the left and the right side. But because that's not a standard size, I just go up to the largest standard size. So I'm going to order 1 1/4 pilaster on my order form. And then to calculate my drawer width, I simply take the 34 1/16 of an inch and subtract my clearance on the left, 1 3/16, and my clearance on the right, 1 3/16, and that is the width of my drawer. Now to use the jig for installing the pilasters and the drawer track, you need to have the brackets installed at a very specific location on the drawer track. The front bracket needs to be at the front cluster of indexed holes there in the rear set of holes. So I'm going to install that right now. And if you leave the screws a little bit loose, you can tighten them later when you're getting ready to install them on the pilasters, just to make sure they're parallel, because sometimes they're a little bit tricky to adjust if they're not perfectly parallel. So I'm going to leave those a little bit loose. And then with the rear bracket, you want to do the same thing. You want that to be in the furthest back set of holes. So I'm going to do that now. And again, I'm going to leave them just a little bit loose so I can adjust them front and back and tighten them when they're actually in the pilasters. So now that we have the brackets in the right spot on the drawer track, the width of the jig is actually the distance you want to be from the back of the face frame. Or if you're using frameless cabinetry, you can actually put that flush with the face of the frameless cabinets. And the front pilaster is then going to be just that distance. I'm going to take my screw gun and go ahead and put the screws in. And this would be the same no matter if you're installing 21-inch deep, 18-inch deep, or 15-inch deep drawer track. That front pilaster is always going to be the same distance from the face there. So you can use this for any of them. Now, we're using 21-inch deep drawer track here, and the jig has 3 different locations, 3 different stop locations for 21-inch, 18-inch, and 15-inch deep slides. And we're using 21-inch deep slides, so what we would do is we're just going to lay the bracket or the jig in there, and then this is where we would put our pilaster. That's the distance. If we were installing 18-inch deep drawer track, the distance would be to the 18-inch notch, and for that you want to flip it around because this would extend further into the back of the cabinet than you probably have space for. So you can install that, and for the bottom one it's easy. You can hold it in place there. Gravity is your best friend. For doing the top one, a lot of times instead of trying to hold the jig there, what I'll do is I'll put the jig up and then make a pencil line at the depth that it needs to be, and then just align my top to that pencil line. Same way for the 15-inch deep drawer track. You just basically set that where that needs to be, and that's where the pilaster would go for the 15-inch deep drawer track. Same thing, gravity is your friend on the bottom side there, and then on the top I would probably just make a pencil line and then install the top of the pilasters as a pencil line. But I'm going to go ahead and install it at the 21-inch depth. All right, and now that both pilasters are installed, we're going to go ahead and put the drawer track in. You can see it fits very well, and at this point I can tighten up the screws because it's sitting in the track and I know it's fairly parallel now. Do that both to the front and the back. And we've got our drawer track. Now that we have the left side installed, we repeat the process on the right side. Now we're ready to install the drawer track. Just like the other side, I have the X series brackets in place, but they're still left a little bit loose, so we can do the final tightening once it's in place. Now we're ready for a drawer. Now let's work through a couple of examples just to get familiar with using the tool. Let's say, for example, we have a cabinet that the inside dimension from the inside of one end to the inside of the other end is 24 inches. And let's say in this scenario, in order to clear the hinges and the stile, you're going to need the drawer to be at least 2 inches away from the inside of the end. to make sure that it opens without hitting anything. In that case, we're going to use our tool here, and it tells us if the drawer has to be 2 inches away from the inside end, then we're going to use the math that it tells us to figure out our pilaster dimension. So if the drawer edge is here, our pilaster is going to be on a 5/8 inch thick side drawer, 5/16 less than that. So we're going to go to our worksheet. We're going to write down the inside cabinet interior width, which was 24. We're going to write down our clearance from the edge to the drawer, which is 2. And then we're going to do our math to figure out our pilaster. Our pilaster is going to be 5/16 less than the drawer. There's 5/16 between the drawer and the pilaster when you figure in the slides and the X-series bracket. And that's going to give you a pilaster width of 1 inch and 11/16. Now if we do the same thing on the other side, if we assume on this cabinet there's also a door that's hinged on the other side, let's assume it's the same. We need 2 inches from the inside of the cabinet to the edge of the drawer, and the pilaster needs to be 5/16 less than the distance to the drawer. We have another side that has 1 inch and 11/16 inch pilaster. So we're going to put that on our worksheet as well. 2 inch from the inside of the cabinet to the edge of the drawer, and then 1 inch and 11/16 pilaster. It's going to stack it for us so that we can see with easy math the inside dimension is 24 minus 2 inches to the edge of the drawer on one side minus 2 inches to the edge of the drawer on the other side, and that gives us a 20-inch wide drawer box that we need to order. And it also tells us what the width of the pilasters are. Now for another example, we're going to try one that, let's assume that a cabinet is 30 inches wide from the inside of the one end to the inside of the other end. So we're going to write that on our worksheet. We're going to write down the 30-inch inside dimension. And then let's assume on this cabinet that in order to clear the face frame and the hinges, let's assume that we need our drawer to be 1.5 inches from the inside end of the cabinet in order to open fully and to maximize space. So we're going to write 1.5 inches on our worksheet, and then we're going to figure out, just like we did before, we need our pilaster to be 5/16 less than that dimension. So if we figure the distance from the inside of the cabinet to the edge of the drawer is 1.5 inches, then our pilaster is going to be 5/16 less, which gives us 1 inch and 3/16 inch pilaster. Now you can see here on this, we have drawn on our standard pilaster dimensions, and we can see that if we would use 1.25 inch pilaster, we wouldn't have to cut that down at all, and the difference in space is only 1/16 of an inch. So in this case, you could actually say, you know what, 1/16 of an inch of space is not that much space. I'm just going to use the standard 1.25 inch pilaster, and instead of making the distance from the inside of the cabinet to the edge of the drawer 1.5 inches, I'm just going to make that 1 inch and 9/16, and then I don't have to cut down my pilaster. So you can choose which way you want to use it. Either just use the standard pilaster dimensions and then figure from that what your drawer edge would be, and we have that already figured here, or you can work backwards, start with your drawer distance from the edge to maximize space, and then subtract the distance there. So in this example, if it's 30 inches between the ends, and we are maximizing space using 1.5 inches to clear from the inside edge of the cabinet to the drawer, that gives us 30 minus 1.5 inches on one side minus 1.5 inches on the other side. That's going to give us a drawer box that is 27 inches wide, and 2 pilasters that need cut down to 1 inch and 3/16 wide. And then everything's going to work out from there. So the jig helped us plan for what size drawer box we needed to order. It also helped us plan what size pilasters we needed to use, and it also helped us install the pilasters in the right spots.